We can hear it coming down on our ceiling right now. We're right across from, sort of the Ghent area in Norfolk, and we can hear that rain falling on the ceiling of our building, and our photographer will be on Brambleton Avenue shortly here. We can go ahead and take that weather impact interceptor as it is. There you see EVMS right in front. So, and just behind EVMS is the Ghent area of Norfolk, Colley Avenue, and Brambleton Avenue running perpendicular to the street that our photographer is on right now. And you can see just a steady rain coming down. The road certainly wet and slick in this area, and he'll be moving throughout Norfolk. We'll visit with this impact interceptor throughout our time here on Live Impact.
That's right, and we want to check out some of the other tower cameras around the region as well. Just kind of give you an overview, because as we were talking earlier, it's sort of the haves and the have-nots with the rain. Again, this is our camera on top of the tower here in downtown Norfolk, not far from where the weather impact interceptor was located, but normally we can see the buildings, and you can't see the buildings. Naya, I'm going to jump back to the weather computer real quick and just kind of bring up that time lapse once again that I started around noon today. And when I first joined Live Impact News at 1 o'clock, we were talking about, we started to see that rain develop on the left-hand side of your screen. And then when I came back here around 1:45, we had some of that heavy rain moving in, and, we got this next batch of heavy rain that is pouring into Hampton Road. So that's, here through downtown Norfolk. And let's give a little bit different view here. A little bit farther south, we go back earlier. This is the South Norfolk Jordan Bridge. So Chesapeake is on the right, or in front of the screen, and behind it is Portsmouth. So this morning, we saw some of that sunshine that heated up the atmosphere. You can see some of those rain showers come through and move by. And again, the rain is in downtown Norfolk, but just go to the South Norfolk Jordan Bridge, just a little bit farther to the south, and we haven't seen that heavy rain.
And you raised an interesting point there, Evan, is that this is in fact batch number 2. It rained quite hard, and then it sort of subsided for a bit, and now once again coming down. Again, we continue to emphasize the scattered nature of the rainfall that we're seeing here.
That's right. This is the Peninsula, our LFCU camera there at Oyster Point, and again, haven't seen much rain on the peninsula. Seen some dark skies coming in, but we just haven't seen, that heavy rain come through the peninsula. And we'll take a look.
Our impact interceptor just passed Onley Road down, kind of going down Colley here. If we want to take that again and just showcase really quickly, Naya, what we're looking at. This is on the road right now outside. This is live. This just got on the road, our weather impact interceptor vehicle here. And, certainly coming down. No question about it. This is a steady rainfall. Those windshield wipers are doing a lot of work there over by the medical complex here in Norfolk.
That's right. This is on Colley Avenue. Here's Red Gate. So just getting ready to move into the heart of Ghent. So let's stay with this for a little bit, because we did send Tony Church, our chief photographer, into the interceptor to the Colley Avenue underpass, because that's one of the areas that we've seen some of that flooding. And, here we are getting up to Virginia Beach Boulevard. So, and even that area, right through the intersection, sometimes we see some standing water right there. So let's see, as the light turns green, go through that intersection and see, if there is some standing water there. It looks like...
Yeah, just a bit of splash there.
Yeah, some debris on the roadways. Yeah, there you can see the standing water there coming up. There, some of that splash over the right-hand side of the hood. So we're continuing down Colley Avenue, heading towards that railroad trestle, that underpass, because that is one of the areas that we typically see flooding in downtown. And then we'll probably end up working our way over towards Monticello. So again, if you're familiar with Ghent, there's the Narrow Cinema on the left.
And we'll certainly note that in this area, afternoon on a weekday, you'll regularly see people sort of walking to and from out on their lunch breaks, and there can definitely be a lot of foot traffic in this area. Not the case right now. People got inside quickly, I'm sure, once that rain started coming down. As you can see, it is raining hard, and there are not a lot of people out and about on foot. Still plenty of cars on the road, again, like we said, this has sort of been an on-off situation. But headed for that overpass, which you noted already experiencing a bit of flooding.
That's right. We saw about a foot of water on there, and here we are up towards the red light. And just to give a shout out to our general manager, when we got the Weather Impact Interceptor, we put a lift kit on it. So the Weather Impact Interceptor sits up higher than most vehicles. So if you're in a vehicle that is low to the ground, I would not advise driving through water. Here you can see this car on the right that definitely wants to back up because they know not to drive through that standing water. But the Impact Interceptor, is on a lift kit, so it should not have any trouble.
And you see the train running up above.
Yeah, the train's up above, so Tony's going to pull in there next to it. And there you can see, that water is up there. That truck going through, that looks more, like a couple of feet. And I think that might even be a stranded car on the left that tried to make it through.
I'm wondering if that car is stopped and said, "Oh, I'm having some trouble here."
Well, that person's getting out.
Yeah.
And see, the one things with the cars that are lower to the ground is a lot of the intake manifold and a lot of the air that gets sucked into the engine is underneath the engine. You think of your SUVs, and you've seen some of those Jeeps, and they have the.
And there we go. They have decided to make their way. No, stopping again.
Yeah, well, this is on the right side, so he probably already went through it.
Right.
And I'm wondering if water got into that engine, and got sucked up into that intake, and once the water gets into the engine, it gets into the cylinders, and then it just ruins your engine, and then you're looking at $3,000 to $5,000 worth of damage to try to go through that. And again,
we certainly hope that's not the case for that individual. But it is interesting that they stopped, they got out, they got back in, they attempted to drive again, and then stopped once again. So hopefully, best case scenario, it's something that they're able to kind of figure out rather quickly. But as compared to the
I can see.
Yeah,
I don't know if Tony can hear us, but if you can, Tony, zoom in on that flood gauge that is there. They put that flood gauge on those pillars, and that will tell us how deep that water is. That's why it's there.
Right in the front, almost looks like a ruler there.
Yeah. So again, I don't know if Tony can hear us, but if he were able to zoom in on that, we would be able to see how deep that water is, and that that gives you an idea. But it's already up to getting close to that first light pole on the side.
And look at the water running down.
Yeah, the water's running
there.
down. And then you can see, where it hits that water that is, coming up. So there, Tony is panning down there. So I'm guessing that car on the other side got some water in it.
They've moved incrementally since we last saw them, I believe, but it doesn't look like a great situation for that vehicle in terms of what they've got going on. It's certainly interesting to see where the water that's rushing down meets the start of sort of the flooding there, and you get almost a little mini wave cresting over on the side by the curb. But I'm surprised at how far up this flooding has come. Obviously, it's quite deep underneath the bridge, but it's even, you've got a decent amount of puddling.
Yeah.
See, you can see all the way up to our tire here on the Impact Interceptor.
And this is what's neat too, is we have the camera that is mounted underneath the Interceptor, so that's pointing at the front right passenger side tire, and you can just see, that water coming rushing down and hitting our tires. We park there to the side. So
intensity on that. That is really moving.
Yeah, and it is coming down, and you can see the cars on the other side there as you get over towards, I think that's 25th Street as you get onto that.
It looks like a steady stream of cars have decided to turn off rather than attempt to make its way through.
Here's a car getting ready to come through. Again, I hope Tony can hear us. See if we can catch those cars trying to come through on the other side.
Let's hope that they're able to make it through. We've also got someone
here's
going
another car
around
trying.
Tony here.
And see, here's the other thing you have to worry about. There we go. Is as the trucks come through, say not a smart move. But as the trucks come through, they also create a wake. You can see that wake even from the car, and this truck pushing that wake, and that will just push, water even higher over your hood.
Creating a wave pool there for a little bit.
That's right, and that, again, very dangerous because, again, it gets into that engine, and, water getting into your engine, getting into your oil, getting into your transmission, that's an expensive fix. So
And with it being a little blurry and that close in shot, it almost looked like we were looking at the ocean for a second there with the way the waves that had been created. I do believe the car that pulled up next to our impact interceptor actually did end up turning around.
Yes.
I don't believe that they tried to go through. And you see the line of cars that's coming towards us that have clearly reconsidered and are now sort of debating what's next, as they have encountered what is just increasingly becoming a very intense body of water under this bridge really here.
Yeah, and again, that car that we were watching earlier, now has its hazard lights on, the one that was stalled on the other side. And there you can see another shot of just that water coming
Rushing down there.
You can see another car, turning around. I think it drove over the curb there to get around, and the other cars very wisely backing up.
Coordinating with each other too. Look at the teamwork there. Those two cars kind of backing up in unison and making the same decision at the same time to head out and not try to go through.
It does look like the water has gotten a little bit higher. I don't think it was all the way close to that first light post when we started. It looks like it has come up just a little bit, as well. And yes, these cars making the very wise decision to turn around. And we say turn around, don't drown. And, when we think of flash flooding, this area doesn't see the typical flash flooding, which is just that water coming rushing down a mountain or river like we saw yesterday, I believe it was, in Mount Airy, North Carolina, or maybe it was Sunday. But the last couple of days we saw that intense flooding again out in the mountains of North Carolina around Mount Airy. Our flash flooding is really more like this.
Right.
It just comes down so heavily, it overwhelms storm drains. We get these underpasses and it just causes, some tremendous amount of flooding. And that's what we're seeing here through parts of downtown Norfolk. So we switched over now to the dashboard camera. And, Tony's gotten videos of this. I imagine, again, we're not in constant contact with the newsroom, but I imagine we might send them to another place here pretty soon up towards Monticello Avenue and get some other shots around the area. Some of this flooding, like here we have a fire truck going through
here. I wonder.
Not going to have any problems, but you imagine, look at that wake on the front of that fire truck.
Wow. That water coming off the front hood of that fire truck, again, just rising so high up. It's clear how deep that flooding is in that area.
And this car, not a smart idea.
It's going to be
stop. Yeah, good idea.
There.
Yeah.
And you wonder if maybe that car even realized how bad it was, because they didn't really seem to be slowing down until they got eyes on that water. They are reversing right up out of there. Clearly,
but here we have another car on the other side that is going to give it a shot.
Okay.
And I'm going to step away from the mic a little bit so I can see, let's see, that's 5, 4, 3, and we got we got some rain on that lens, but I can definitely see that's 5, 4, 3 feet. So we're probably getting close to that 2-foot level.
So what Evan just did here, guys, is he walked up and he checked that ruler that they've got right at the front of that overpass to see just how much flooding. And I agree with you. It looked right at about 2 feet there. We saw a little bit of debris floating down, maybe some trash or something of that nature. Every manner of receptacle just getting caught up in this flowing water that is just sort of rapidly headed down under that overpass. And again, what we see here is a line of cars will form, and there's a decision to be made. All of those cars will back out. There will be a moment where things are clear, and then the next set of cars will come in and start to make their own decisions. We've almost seen fleets or teams of cars sort of all coming upon this flooding at the same time, and for the most part, in unison, deciding not to take on the flooding that they're seeing.
Yeah, that might even be, that's up to 2.5 feet. I can see that now. That's up to 2.5 feet deep. That water that we're seeing there.
And it's no surprise that the water level is rising when we see the amount of water that is rushing down into the area, right? You would expect it to rise with how much water we see, not just coming from the sky, but flowing down from higher ground in and under that bridge. And we do have one vehicle that is looking to make its way through.
See just how much that, and water comes over. And this is an SUV. and it's up a little bit higher, but
Certainly a larger
that
vehicle.
is not a good
That's
sign.
unfortunate to see it stop there. You don't want to see that car stop right there because you know that you don't think they're stopping there on purpose, do you?
No.
Right. So it does look like maybe they have encountered some issues, and that's a bigger vehicle. That's an SUV, like you said. That is not one of the smaller cars that we see that we typically don't even consider it. This is a larger vehicle, and it appears as though even that vehicle really maybe was overcome by this flooding and forced to stop because of some internal issues. You certainly hope not. You don't want cars to be stuck down there either, especially as we saw that fire truck needed to go through there.
Yeah.
You want to keep this area clear for emergency vehicles in this type of situation.
That's right, and I understand, here in a moment we're going to be going on air on Channel 13 to cover this flooding that is going through the downtown area and this flood warning, and now we see our second stalled vehicle here at this underpass, one of the typical areas. And again, you think that you have, this, larger vehicle that can go through the water, and it still gets stalled.
And it's difficult, right? Because a car like that is so big and so high off the ground that in your mind, it doesn't seem like, especially when you're looking at that floating, that sort of water from a higher ground, it certainly will look like something that maybe an SUV could make its way through. But then once you actually dip down below that overpass, you see how the water just overtakes the hood of the car, because there's also a splash factor there, and that water is just rushing all in the front of that vehicle. And that leads to a situation like this, where this car does appear to have experienced some issues and is now stopped right under that overpass. And guys, we certainly do not cherish this. We do not want to see these cars get stuck under here.
And we do have another flash flood warning that has just been issued for Isle of Wight and Suffolk. That other storm that we were watching around Smithfield a little bit earlier, so we have a brand new flash flood warning that has been issued until 5 o'clock for Isle of Wight and Suffolk because of some of that heavy rain.
And guys, I know we're looking at the flash flood warning. Could we go back to the interceptor? It does look like we've got someone, if Tony could bring his camera up, it looks like we have an individual who's maybe pushing a bike through, and that gives us an idea of just, this is almost up to that person's knees or maybe thighs there. I just wanted to get a look at that. We can go back to that flash flood warning here whenever you're ready, Evan.
Yeah, and that is for Suffolk and Isle of Wight County until 5 o'clock. We have had 1.5 to 2 inches of rain, and another, inch is coming and expected. So we are looking at that potential for some flash flooding as well. Talking about Smithfield, Isle of Wight, Rescue, Crittenden, Driver, Longview, Willis Corner, Ben's Church, Chuckatuck, Carrollton, Hobson, Lawson, Indica, Bethel Church, Mogarts Beach, Central Hill, and Whitley. So those are some of the communities that are under this flash flood warning.
Could we pop back over to the interceptor now? This individual pushing their bike, and they've kind of made it through there, but we saw the struggle that they were trying to get through, just taking a deep breath here, really stopping to collect their breath, it seems like, after pushing that bike all the way through that area underneath the train overpass here down Colley Avenue, with a little bit longer to go here. But it just kind of an astounding effort to even get that bike through there with the amount of flooding. And you see how the water is working against them here as well. Look at that water bouncing off the tire there. And we have officially gone live here on our linear station. We want to welcome anyone who has been watching 13 News Now, who has been watching ABC. We interrupt your regularly scheduled programming because we have flash flood warnings throughout our area. I'm going to bring in meteorologist Evan Stewart, who has been with us throughout this weather event. Evan, could you do a couple things for us? Could you give us a locator where we're looking at and why this is a hotspot area here, and then we'll kind of carry on with our general coverage.
That's right. There you can see on the left-hand side of your screen is our weather impact interceptor, and this is the underpass on Colley Avenue there by 21st Street, and this is one of the areas that we typically see flooding. And I guess it was now, about 45 minutes ago, we started getting reports of the flooding of that underpass. We were on here earlier on Live Impact News, even at 1 o'clock, talking about the potential for the flooding. And this is that underpass, and it's a little hard to see, but right there on the right-hand side of your screen is a ruler on that column, and that shows you how deep that water is. and the top of that ruler is 6 feet. So here we have another car. This car is not going to make it. The SUV did not make it. Look, that water is over the headlights.
Yeah, that is completely covered the hood of that car.
You cannot see those headlights. And again, I'll be surprised if this car makes. I'm surprised that that car has made it this far, considering the SUV did not make it through that water.
It looks like they might have a shot here, and good on them, because the goal is for everyone to be safe. But the best way by far to be safe is to not attempt what that car actually just successfully did there, making it through that flooding. That did give us a good idea of just how high that water has risen. So that car actually did make it through. This vehicle, which we saw attempt the same thing about 5 minutes ago, clearly was not so lucky. It is definitely the smartest and safest option to turn around in this situation, as evidenced again by the fact that we see this vehicle, which has been stuck under there for about 5 to 10 minutes now.
That's right. And one of the things, with the different vehicles is you don't necessarily know where that intake is for the air. Some of these vehicles, even the SUVs, they might have the intake in like maybe the front wheel well or something, or it might be lower than the top of the engine. So if you don't know where that intake is, then you don't know exactly where that water could get sucked into your engine. And, you might just have bad timing where you're trying to go through and, there's another truck coming the other way. And you can just see that water is still rushing down this underpass and, creating, like you said, almost, this little, we got a curl that looks like,
sort of a wave pool here,
Yeah.
or like you could see if this, it almost looks life-size, like a surfer could just ride right out of that barrel and ride this little wave here in sort of a miniature version, because not only is the water still falling from the sky, but it is rushing in from higher ground into this area. And a thing that we will note once again, it was about 20 minutes ago we saw a fire truck make their way
here we have another
under
car.
this overpass.
There
here.
you can see we're getting close to 3 feet now. We're over the 2.5 foot mark. So we're about 2 3/4 of a foot. So we're getting close to that 3 foot level there. Thank you, Tony, for zooming in on that. So again, that just shows you, now we're talking about, a yard of water, and that has been steadily coming up. And it almost looks, I know we get a little
close
bit
to 3 feet here.
Yeah, I know we get a little bit of those waves coming in here that, kind of, but it does look like, just as we're watching it live, that water is coming up deeper and the rain is still coming down. So our flash flood warning for Norfolk and Portsmouth, a little bit of Chesapeake and Suffolk, is in effect until 4 o'clock. So that is, how long this warning is out. And then we have the new warning until 5 o'clock. That is for Isle of Wight and Suffolk. So those are the two warnings. They're scrolling on the bottom of the screen on air. So that is our warning there for Norfolk and Portsmouth. And we'll zoom in, show you the areas that we're watching. Again, we're mainly looking here a little bit of northern Suffolk over into Western Branch, just about all of northern Portsmouth from about 264 northward, and then through the downtown area. Let's get an updated look of this 1 hour rainfall total in here. I'll check the 3 hour and see if that is updated. Looks about the same as the 1 hour. But again, we're looking at 2 inches of rain in a lot of spots through downtown Norfolk and Portsmouth. 1.5, Colonial Place, as we get here towards the downtown area and Colley Avenue. And I'm going to clear this out, and I'm going to zoom in here to the area that we're specifically talking about, where our weather impact interceptor is. And we come up here to Colley Avenue and 21st Street, and I'll take off the radar just for a moment. And it is right here. These are the railroad tracks, and this is that underpass where our live impact interceptor is located. We're right there. So this is the railroad tracks and the Colley Avenue overpass. So as we put back on,
and that water is about to touch 3 feet. It is rising as we speak here.
So and still heavy rain coming down. This is as the radar sweep comes around. That's some moderate to heavy rain coming down on that area right now.
And we did get an email from Madison Schlegel, one of our reporters here at 13 News Now, who said that all of Ghent is basically a parking lot right now, all the way down 21st Street. Again, that area that we're kind of looking at, you can imagine with no one being able to use that underpass, there may be quite a few backups that are building up in the area, as people are certainly, and rightfully so, hesitant to drive through that flooding.
That's right. So we'll widen back out, take a look again at some of the other places, our other flash flood warning. That is here into Suffolk till 5 o'clock, Isle of Wight and Suffolk, and that's another area that we have seen that very heavy rain. So we'll go back to the interceptor and show you, again, what we're seeing, that one vehicle that stalled out. And again, this is an SUV. We've seen cars make it through, but this SUV did not. And I know this SUV was almost out of the water when it stalled. And now look that it's covered, it's getting up there. What was that, about 3/4 of the way up that front tire?
The water definitely rising since we saw that vehicle get stuck. We feel for whoever, the driver and other passengers that might be in that car, and hopefully they are able to get out of there and get to a safe space one way or another. But we watched as that car tried to make it through and came to a very slow stop, as clearly it was sort of overtaken by that flooding. Now, this is the tire of our Weather Impact Interceptor vehicle, and this shows just the intensity of the water rushing in from higher ground. Again, not just the rain in this situation. Water is rushing down into this area. Evan, we actually have Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandagis is ready to go here to join in on our coverage. Is there anything you want to add before we toss to him?
Just the main thing is that, we still have some of these showers and thunderstorms that are lingering in the area, and they're very slow movers. And we're watching some of that heavy rain across North Carolina as well. So those are the two warnings that we've been watching, and that flooding that we've been watching in Norfolk, Connor.
Okay, excellent. We will now throw to Tim Pandagis. We are tracking flash flood warnings in the area until 4 o'clock. Tim is going to join us now for a little bit more in-depth coverage from our main studio. Tim, can you hear me? How's everything going over there? What do you have for us? Okay, we don't hear Tim just yet. I would imagine that once he's all set up, we'll hear him chime in. Okay, welcome back into our live Impact News studio. We continue with our weather coverage now. We're monitoring flash flood warnings until 4 p.m. in different parts of our area. And let's take a look back at this weather impact interceptor, Naya, if you don't mind, because for a long time we were sitting on Colley Avenue right in front of that underpass. The overpass is the train tracks. And our chief photographer, Tony Church, was there for about 45 minutes because the flood levels were rising and rising, not just from rainfall, but from water rushing down from higher ground. They reached 3.5 feet. We did see a car get stuck, and then our photographer simply had to turn around. Tony had to turn around because the water was making its way up to our weather impact interceptor vehicle. So he's turned around to safety. You can still see how hard it's raining, but that's why we're no longer on that flooding. Meteorologist Evan Stewart is here with us still. Evan, has anything changed in terms of what we're looking at in the forecast?
Right. Well, I think the main thing that we saw was that water level on that gauge, it was just a little bit over 2 feet when we started there with the weather impact interceptor, and it was over 3.5 feet, getting close to that 4 foot before Tony just had to move. And if you were watching the stream, we saw him move out of there. And there are still some cars, some bigger vehicles that have tried to make it through. And Tony has switched now to the 360 camera. And here we see somebody trying to drive over.
Trying to hop the curb looks like.
Yeah, and that's not a good idea either, especially if you have one of these lower cars, because then you're going to scrape bottom. So
you certainly want to avoid the flooding, but you want to make sure that in doing so, you don't damage your vehicle or another vehicle in trying to avoid the flooding. But as you can see, it creates a very chaotic situation because the roads leading up to this, while wet and slick and experiencing puddling at some intersections, are not quite on the level of what you see when you get to this underpass. And so some people get a little bit too close to where by the time they try to turn around, they find themselves in a very tight situation, as you can see right here. So hopefully, if you're watching this and you have loved ones or friends, family who are out on the roads, perhaps being able to warn them a bit about what they could encounter in the Ghent area and as you move down Colley.
Yes, and this is one of the 2 areas that we have flash flood warnings for. And you can see this paratransit vehicle here as well is about to, make that U-turn as well. And man, that is going to be tight for that vehicle.
It is. It's a tight
trying
turn.
to do this 3-point turn. I wonder if he's just going to go over the curb. That would, yeah. I mean, that vehicle is so long. I don't know if that vehicle is even going to be able to do a 3-point turn. That is just tight there.
And we'll note again, Evan, as that vehicle works to make that turn to get out from that area with the flooding, if you look at the wheel of that bus, you can still see the waves cresting up against the tire because that water is just flowing so heavily sort of downstream into that flooded area where the curb begins. You can also get a good look at some of those, the white caps almost as if you're looking out at the ocean because that water is trying to flow down there. We just saw a car run across the foreground, and you can see quite a bit of puddling even just in that intersection.
Yeah, just at the intersection at 21st and Colley, and right there you can see the waves, even at that median, coming in there. So yeah, the vehicle
that is really good to see that vehicle was able to get out from under there, because another thing that we'll note, we saw a fire truck go through there earlier, and it's not just you want your vehicle to be safe as possible, you want the people in your vehicle to be safe, but you also want to keep these areas clear in case emergency vehicles need to get through, because we're obviously in a heightened precaution here with this weather.
That's right. And we saw the gentleman pushing the motorcycle. Remember, we saw, and that water was up over his knees and close to his thighs. And that's before we were seeing that water up getting close to 4 feet deep. So let's get back to radar real quick, just to kind of reset here and let people know what warnings we have out, because we have seen these showers and thunderstorms lifting to the north. We have 2 flash flood warnings in our area, and then they extend even up towards Richmond. So we have the 1 flash flood warning that prompted our continuous coverage here, first on Live Impact News and then here on air until 4 o'clock for just a little bit of Chesapeake, a little bit of South Norfolk, Portsmouth, Suffolk, and just about all of Norfolk inside 64. So if you're outside 64, you're getting the heavy rain up around the airport and Ocean View. So that is our first flash flood warning. And then until 5 o'clock, we have the one in Isle of Wight County and Suffolk for some heavy rain. And just watching, we've got this new one, a little bit of Surrey County now up here. It includes Surrey, Prince George, and Charles City. That is until 6 o'clock. So that is a brand new flash flood warning as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if something here is issued for Isle of Wight County and Surrey County as well, because of the heavy rain that has fallen there as well. And we were outlooked for a level 1 risk of flooding, and now we're seeing that flooding here across the area. And this follows some flooding earlier from the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where we still have some flood advisories for Dare County, but we do have that heavier rain here through North Carolina, but those flash flood warnings that are up through parts of Southside and then back towards Petersburg, Richmond. So it's just this line. I'm going to put in an hour loop and just kind of slow it all down so you can see it very slowly, just how these storms, have sort of sat over the same area and kept just staggered in that area and really don't move. It's what we call training, and that's what's prompted these flash flood warnings. And you can even see a little bit of an outflow boundary that is coming in off of those thunderstorms off towards the south. So we'll have to watch and see, if we even get a little bit more additional development on that, on that line, that, outflow boundary that is sort of set up right through there. I'm joined now with Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandages, who was driving in some of this rain, and you've been covering this. You were covering some of this on air, and now you join us here on